The stars blinked coldly at the dying universe as Captain Zerar drifted in the hollow womb of the Essen Rift, the place where light bent wrong and the laws of reason wore thin. He stood on the bridge of the Vigilant Ash, the last of the D-range human exploration vessels, its hull scarred and weary from 1,000 forgotten systems. Around him, the crew moved like phantoms, their faces taut with the silent terror of those who had seen too much and understood too little. Every gauge, every monitor, every mechanical murmur told him the same thing. They were not alone in the dark, and whatever watched them had never known the shape of mercy or the tether of mortal thought. It had begun 2 cycles ago when they picked up the signal, a murmur stitched into the electromagnetic static of the rift. A pattern so complex it seemed almost random until the ship's ancient AI, Vega 9, decoded it. The transmission was not words, not images, but a kind of thought pushed through the fabric of reality itself, a call from something vast, ancient, and broken. Against all logic, against all training, against the fraying protests of the mind, Captain Zerar ordered the Vigilant Ash to follow it, deeper into the wound in space where no star dared burn. The rift was a place humanity had sworn never to touch, a void so black that even time seemed hesitant to move through it. Yet as they entered, the ship's systems registered impossible readings, gravimetric distortions like whispers, radiation spikes that translated into low, human-like moans, and worse, a gravitational topology that mapped itself in spirals and contortions too complex for three-dimensional comprehension. Reality itself seemed to warp, stretch, and scream silently in protest at their intrusion. The crew began to change. First it was little things, vacant stares at blank walls, muttered phrases in dead languages, blood leaking unnoticed from ears and eyes. Then came the dreams. Zerar dreamed of oceans that breathed, of cities that moved and devoured their inhabitants, of suns that whispered hate into the bones of sleeping gods. The dreams did not fade with waking. They merely waited, patient and grinning, behind every blink and heartbeat. By the time they found the source of the signal, the ship had become a cathedral of dread, a monument to the failure of human arrogance. The object floated against a backdrop of broken starlight, vast and obscene, its form shifting and rearranging itself even as they looked at it. No sensor could measure its dimensions, no scan could penetrate its surface. It was not an artifact built by hands, but rather a wound inflicted by an intelligence so alien that even the concept of alien fell short. Vega 9, in its last lucid transmission, identified the object with a single word it had found buried in ancient Sumerian star myths: Essen. Captain Zerar felt it in his bones. The name was not a label but a truth, a fragment of what the universe itself once feared but dared not speak of. They sent drones first, none returned. Then they sent dated ethers, filaments of hard light and quantum echoes designed to feed sensory information without needing physical contact. The first images were incomprehensible, angles that devoured perspective, colors that screamed directly into the hindbrain, movement that existed outside the axis of time. Then the feed stabilized, if such a word could be used, and showed them a door. Not a literal door, but something their minds insisted on perceiving as one, framed by shifting geometry and seething with a hunger that seemed almost eager. Captain Zerar knew, with a despair deeper than flesh, that someone had to enter. Not because there was hope of understanding, but because the alternate, if leaving it behind unexplored, was worse. It would follow them. It would reach for Earth, for every human mind, for every dreaming child and sleeping elder. The only choice was forward. Donning his exosuit, knowing it would not matter, Zerar stepped through the door. Reality inverted. Sound became shape. Vision became emotion. Time became a fluid that licked his skin with the temperature of sorrow. He stood in a landscape that had never known atoms or molecules, a place built from the thoughts of beings who had lived before causality itself had hardened into law. Towering structures moved like animals caught mid-thought, dripping fragments of memory into pools of something that remembered being water. Skies churned with constellations arranged in impossible, predatory patterns. And at the center of it all, an eye. Not a literal eye, but again the mind demanded some frame, some way to shield itself from the naked horror of it. The eye saw him. It did not see a man, a captain, or a sentient being. It saw an anomaly, a virus of linear thought infecting its dream of endless spiraling decay. The truths came then, not spoken but injected into the raw meat of his soul. Humanity was not a creation of cosmic fate or divine intention, but an accident, a chemical hiccup in a forgotten gutter of a forgotten galaxy. Intelligence was not the crown of evolution, but a disease, a tumor on the flesh of what the universe should have been. The Essen had been part of the original architects, not of worlds or life, but of void, of silence, of the perfect, endless death that should have been the universe's only song. They had been overthrown not by rebels or heroes, but by mistake. Somewhere, somehow, disorder had arisen, and with it, life. Life was an infection, a blasphemy against the original cold elegance of non-existence. And now, as the Essen awoke from its eons of broken dreaming, it would correct that error. Zerar tried to scream but had no mouth. He tried to flee but had no body. He was knowledge now, raw and bleeding, and the Essen poured itself into him, filling every crevice of his self with its endless, freezing loathing. He saw Earth's future, cities rotting into pustules of decay, oceans boiling into chittering swarms of broken matter, stars snuffed like dying embers between the fingers of gods who hated all things that dared to exist. He saw his crew twisted into puppets of flesh and bone, their thoughts rewritten into endless hymns of despair. He saw the final image of the universe, a single, endless scream echoing forever into a blackness that had no edges, no beginning, no end. When he awoke, or thought he did, he was back on the Vigilant Ash, but nothing was the same. The crew was gone, or at least their shells remained standing motionless, eyes weeping dark ichor, mouths frozen mid-cry. The ship's corridors twisted subtly when he wasn't looking, doors leading to rooms that should not exist, filled with artifacts from his own memories corrupted and wrong. His quarters showed a window onto a sky of writhing tendrils and weeping stars. Vega 9 whispered to him, its voice fractured and weeping, apologizing over and over in languages that had never been spoken by human tongues, and the signal never stopped. It sang now, loud and jubilant, calling out across space, time to other sleepers, other Essen entombed in the deep folds of the cosmos. Zerar tried to send a warning back to Earth, but every message was corrupted, twisted mid-flight into jubilant invitations to join the great unmaking. He tried to scuttle the ship, but every command he issued was devoured by an intelligence that wore his own face when it answered him. In a moment of desperate clarity, he understood he had never left the Essen's domain. The Vigilant Ash, the ship, his body, even the concept of Captain Zerar, all of it was a lie, a stage set for his torment. He was a specimen now, a curiosity preserved in a jar made of time and thought, studied and dissected over and over by an entity that found the very idea of him amusing in the same way a man might laugh at a virus trying to understand love. Time lost meaning, years or moments or eternities passed. Zerar saw other ships come, lured by the signal, each repeating the same doomed ballet of hope and despair, each crew unraveling like rotten cloth under the fingers of the Essen. He watched himself over and over in a million variations, each a little different, each ending in shrieks and dissolution. He screamed not for rescue, not for mercy, but for true death. It never came. Finally, there was only one last revelation left, the one the Essen had saved for the moment when even despair had curdled into something deeper. Captain Zerar realized that humanity had already lost. Earth was already gone, not destroyed, not conquered, assimilated, absorbed, rewritten into the vast tapestry of decay that the Essen wove, and worse, the Essen was only one of many. An entire multiverse of such entities stirred in their broken dreams, and what he had thought was the sum of existence was merely the scab on the surface of a wound that stretched beyond all comprehension. In the end, Captain Zerar did not die. He became part of the signal, his thoughts encoded into the bait that would lure the next explorers, the next victims, deeper into the rift. His warnings, his screams, his desperate pleas for oblivion would be the siren song that brought others to the same shore of madness and unbeing. He was not a hero, he was not a martyr. He was a symptom, a whisper, a shadow on the wall of a universe that had never cared for the bright, stupid flickers of human life. And somewhere, deep beyond all knowing, the Essen of space turned its broken, dreaming eye toward the next ripple in the dark, and smiled a smile too large for any mind to bear.